So, Kat, someone's entering social care for the first time, service user, maybe a family member, someone who's about to be employed in it. What's the one thing you'd want them to know before they start?
In respect of trying to find or pick the right service, or know about, what social care offers and delivers?
Anything. What's that one nugget?
I think, well, certainly look at CQC reports. That's always a thing I'll say to people, because it is a minefield out there trying to find the right social care. And we also have a unregulated market that is becoming more and more appealing to people that are getting direct payments, etc. And I completely get it and understand why it's appealing market, and the client gets to have all that control. But again, it's the safety risks. We see a lot of horror stories in the sector. We see a lot of people not understanding that they have more rights in picking which care homes they want to go in. So again, I think it's doing that homework. What are my rights? What happens if I'm offered a placement that I don't like, or a care provider that I don't like? Can I challenge it even if I am publicly funded? That's what I would say about somebody trying to find a service. What would I say about being the things to look out for in a service? I think it's just caring, the ethos of the company. Their safeguarding measures is key, because I think we've got a lot of small providers that just do such amazing things in the sector. I class myself as an SME, even though I do have over 350 staff, but I'm still an SME. But the smaller providers, they are just wonderful, and they work in a way that is more person-centred than some of the larger, more corporate companies, which I'll get shot down for saying, but it is, I'll get killed for that, but it is true. It is, they have a small workforce, which means they're able to go in and have those that consistent care force, which, as we know, in the current market, we are all struggling to recruit and to retain. So if you can get yourself a really small team and build those relationships, that is gold dust. And I think one of the most important things, and also the most challenging things for providers, is people come into the care sector and they're needing a service, and they think, right, I'm going to have this person, and I'm going to get the times that I want, and I will get things done as and when I want them, in the way that I want them. And absolutely, it should be that way. But unfortunately, a lot of care providers, we don't get funded to be able to accommodate all of those luxuries. They shouldn't be luxuries, they should be mandatory. But for care providers, we, especially when we look at community care, we can't always offer set times. Everybody wants 9 o'clock. We want to give everybody 9 o'clock, but we don't have a workforce that is able to work just 9 till 10 and then go home. So I think it's be patient with the care providers as well, and understand that at the moment the sector is really, really struggling. And it is a very sad time in the marketplace for us. So I have no golden nuggets, and I just keep looking. Sorry, my dog's in the background.
Oh, no. Well, a fascinating distraction. You've got 300 care staff and a dog. It's great.
He never sits there either. I'm so sorry. So I don't really have a golden nugget. Only that if we've got carers and we've got a really massive shortage of workforce, if we've got carers and they're in and being looked after by the providers they're working for, they are amazing people, because what they are doing with the constraints, the underfunding, the low wages, and they're still bringing themselves to work every single day, sacrificing their own time, sacrificing time with their own children to come and look after others. They are just wonderful human beings. So I think if you can go in and you can see that ethos among the team, then just embrace it, take it, capture it. But it's really hard to pinpoint a golden nugget when searching for a provider at the moment, because I also feel there won't be many left the rate that we're going at the moment.
That's a fascinating statement. Let's hone in on that one. There's not going to be many left.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the domiciliary at-home care market, or
No, both. Unfortunately, we are losing. We're losing providers left, right, and centre over up and down the country, and unfortunately, it does come down to funding. It does come down to sustainability, and a lot of adult social care is funded by the councils. And when we have the government enforcing national minimum wage, ENICs, fair pay agreements, employment right bills, the Home Office coming with their immigration changes, all of those costs we have to absorb as providers. It doesn't matter, even charities, we've all got the same issue. And then when we get the fee increases from the councils, if we get a fee increase from the council, it doesn't match. So actually, the providers that are sometimes just working, if we look at the SMEs, they're just working for a salary. They're not there with a massive profit coming in. They're sat there taking a salary that actually they went and worked for another provider, they would get that same salary in that position. So, and there's more and more pressures. We've got the Employment's Right Bill starting now, which irks me. And I do not, for 1 second, do not think that employment should be protected, but it also needs to be funded. I'm looking at this sickness from day one. We all know in the care sector, sickness, death from day one, there's a lot of day one sickness, right? And now the fact that we are going to be funding that day one sickness, I would have much preferred the council to come to me and say, right, let's do an incentive. Anyone that doesn't have sickness, let's reward them. But instead they're coming to me and saying, we have to reward the ones that are off sick. And I know not everybody is, faking it, but day one sickness, I can't get my head round it. How can we allocate such a big budget to that instead of the budget put towards the care workers that are showing up, that are not having any sickness, that are reliable? Because now as a provider, I have to make a decision in April on pay increases. So where I've been looking to say, right, I'm going to put I've been given 3% by the council. I know my costs are 10%. I'm still going to try and give 3% to my workforce. Hang on, no. I've got to cut out what that sickness pay is going to cost me. So I'm taking away that budget for my workforce to sit and keep it there for the ones that don't show up. I can't get my head around it. And again, I'll probably get shot for that. But it's like the whole prescription thing, right? If you don't work, we'll pay for your prescription and pay for you to get better to do nothing. But if you do work, you've got to pay to get yourself better, to get back to work, to carry on paying your taxes. I feel like it's the same mad policy, and I just do not agree that the best decision was made there to incentivise the workforce. You look at the NHS's billions of pounds a year sick pay, one of the highest rates of sickness in any industry, because it's fully funded. So we've already got an awful sickness rate, but we've never been as bad as the NHS, and we're a larger workforce than the NHS. Introduce day one rights. Let's see how that goes. I can tell you now, I can write the book on it. So providers are not going to be able to deal with this. The immigration changes at the moment, and the Home Office coming down hard on people that have not reported in sick days. People have lost a licence for not informing the Home Office that a sponsored member had a day off sick. They wasn't under their contracted hours, by the way, but they just had a day off sick on an overtime day. They hadn't been reporting those instances in, and now they've lost their licence. So all those vulnerable people have no access to care, and the Home Office don't care about that because it's two different problems, and that everything else has been done by the book. But from that one reporting issue, that whole licence is revoked. So it does currently feel like we're in a battlefield with no weapons at the moment. The care sector is getting shot from every which angle. And then I see we've added prisoner guards to the new a new code to sponsors on the Home Office, and now we're welcoming in overseas dentists because we've got an issue with getting a dentist appointment. and they've got a workforce shortage. And I'm just like, come on, we have got a shortage still with the guy, with the international workers here. And now you're saying you're going to take him away, give us this magic domestic workforce, and everything's going to be okay. It's not. So, yeah, I do not think there's going to be many providers standing if things continue as they are.
So you painted an amazing picture there of what is going on and all the challenges that providers across the country face. And the impact on individual choice is huge, because that's right at the heart of the Care Act. Everyone has the right to choose what care they get.
100%.
How do you think this gets squared? Do you think it can be? Do you think the government could ever turn around and square it?
I don't think we've got long enough. I don't think we've got long enough. But I think for me, Care Act, honestly, Michael, that is one thing I always pick up, because we've got the Care Act that we might as well just set on fire when it comes to commissioning, because we're all supposed to meet this. Your councils now get inspected by CQC, but the moment money comes in, doesn't matter if you're not meeting preferences, it doesn't matter if the client's not getting choice, it doesn't matter that you've got 13,000 people bed blocking because social care can't afford to discharge them. It doesn't matter that 60,000 people a year are being refused domiciliary care support because there is no funding, but they do need the care and there is a need. All of that goes out the window. Like, nobody, if there's no money, then the Care Act's just forgotten about, because the way that we are commissioned is a serious breach of the Care Act, and nothing can get done to challenge it. So we just get told that we have to be more resilient and we need to get on with it. So that annoys the life out of me. And if I hear that one more time, I think I will actually lose it, because I couldn't run a tighter ship. I run things as tight as I possibly can to keep every margin I can to give back to my workforce. So I think one thing that I've been quite vocal on is the fair pay agreement. I want staff to get paid fair pay. If they turned around to me tomorrow and said, right, we're going to make the ENICs exempt for social care providers, like they should have, because I only have public funded clients, so I should have the same luxuries as the NHS, but that's another argument. If they said to me that was going to happen, all of that money I would give to my front line. I would absolutely pass that on to my front line, so I could give them a £2 an hour pay rise. So they are stopping me from encouraging a domestic workforce and from incentivising my workforce to stay and actually pay them for the work, the hard graft they do each and every single day. So I think, leading back, what would my ask be? My ask would be, continue with the fair pay agreement, but do not put the fair pay agreement on providers. Why would you put it on providers? There's thousands of us, right? Put the fair pay agreement onto the councils, right? You've got 152, right, that hold the social care budget, right? It's up to them to make sure providers are adhering to that fair pay agreement. And guess what? If they're responsible for it, they've got to make sure that we're receiving the funds to be able to pay our staff correctly. That's how the fair pay agreement should be rolled out. And it will also be cheaper to run for them because they're doing it over 152 people instead of thousands. So I think that would actually help us change the dynamics of the sector, make sure that the frontline are getting the increased salaries that they're supposed to be, because they're just not right now. And they all should be on a minimum of £15. I think anyone entry to care, going out and doing what they're doing, or in these care homes, which are no longer care homes full of little Bettys and Marys sitting there knitting. They're full of Bettys and Marys that need hoisting, they need peg feeding, high complex need, dementia. I think that £15 is still an insult. You look at people that say brickies and labourers. Oh, that's a grafting job, that is, right? Because you can see them doing it outside. You can see them sweating and the sun's coming down and you're like, oh, I wouldn't want to do that. That is exactly what goes on behind these bricks, behind those doors. The carers are doing that. They ain't getting any raise. They're there and they are dealing with complex, challenging situations, as well as trying to be counsellors, to be chefs, pharmacists, confidence advocates. There's so much that goes on behind closed doors, and they are not compensated for it enough at all.
So is that a question of, sorry, go back one stage. I think if you look at the roots of social care, it was back
Yeah.
in the 1600s, poor laws keep going through. It's about charity. Yes, it's public funded, but it's based on this charity model. And I think we've reached a stage
Mm-hmm.
where the assumption that people will volunteer their time or will give their time for a low cost wage because they're doing a vocation, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's now gone. And I think it's because of the national living wage essentially. And we're all paying 26,000 pounds a year next year to have someone at national
Yeah.
living wage, which is no longer low cost.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's that needs to change? Or is this a question of something more that we actually need to have more transparency in the sector? So is it a function of wage, or is it a function of social care not being transparent enough and sharing what we do?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both, Michael. I think we don't advocate the amazing work we do, and I know there's been campaigns. We've had the Proud to Care campaign, and they do all these lovely videos of people smiling, making stuff, bit of arts and crafts, going around down the beach in the wheelchair, and that's all nice, yeah. But the public don't understand the other raw stuff that goes on, and the soft signs of deterioration that people pick up on, and how we save lives every day. There's so much more to it. You might see somebody being pushed down the seafront in a wheelchair looking all happy and they're having the best relationship, but what did it take for us to get that client into that wheelchair? Back at the home, we've had to get them changed because they've been incontinent, that they didn't like the way that it was being done because they've got sensory issues, so there's been a little bit of aggression. There's then been manual handling issues where it's taken 4 members of staff to try and get them in the wheelchair. Then the clients decided they didn't want to go, so now they're getting out the wheelchair. Now they want to go, they're getting back in the wheelchair. Now we've got to figure out how we're going to get this person there. There's so much more that goes into that one nice moment that we don't shout about enough. The inside out. We do look at Watchdog, and when we've done like the COVID inquiry and the documentary, so you can see behind the scenes. As a sector, we need to advocate that as well. And I always say, and this is awful because I do not think anybody in care, I'm not comparing them to a dog. But I always think the RSPCA adverts. Do you know when they go in and the dog's been all dishevelled and it's not eaten, it's covered in feces, and then they bring them in, they give them a wash, and they sort them out. That happens in my company every single day. We will walk into people's properties that have been discharged from hospital nearly a week ago, right? And now all of a sudden we're coming in. This person might have been stuck in a chair for a week. They've not eaten, they're malnourished, they've got no food, there might be rats in the property, they've got no clean clothes, they've got no electricity, right? We will go in and we'll sort all that out. And we will start making sure they get the medical support they need. And then they get better, they get stronger, and they build those relationships. It's that part. How do we get to that part that we don't shout enough about? And it's so easy for people to come to the press, come to the media and moan, I've had this awful care company. And that does happen. And there is people out there that should never work in care. But that's what gets the spotlight, because it's news, the bad news. This is what everybody likes to read, because we start all pushing out every day, oh, look at this person, they was like this and now they're like this. That might get a bit of attention, but would it be, ethically right to do that? Probably not. Do you see what I mean? So we do fight a losing battle. And I always take it back to, I go back to the workmen. You sit there, they're seeing it, you see all of the bricks, and then by the end they've got this beautiful building and it's amazing. Look at that work they've achieved. That's what we're missing, how it starts and how we get to that landscape. That's the bit that we need to start showing people. And then maybe, just maybe, people might understand the sector better, and get rid of this. All they do is wipe bums and look after people that are crazy, because we don't. We look after kids. We look after stressed parents that have had nervous breakdowns because they've got challenging children. We look after people that have got drugs and alcohol problem, but not necessarily because they've done that, because they've been in environments where they've been exploited. You know, there's so much more to what we do. And, you know, I love the NHS, I support the NHS, but when you go to hospital, you go and you get your clinical needs sorted out. Like, if you imagine you've been diagnosed with cancer, there you go there and you get your clinical. Who does the rest? All that mental support that you need, all that therapeutic support you need, because it isn't just about the treatment. It affects your family, it affects you, it affects your daily living. Who's going to arrange the equipment I need? Who's going to pick up my meds? That all comes into social care. We're so much bigger. We do so much more. We are like the wraparound service, and nobody, the public, are not educated enough to know that if we crumble, the NHS will not survive. So what can we do to promote the sector, to educate the public so they can come behind us like they did with the pubs and the pub taxes, you know, and I rant about that. You know, we're giving them taxes free, and who do you think is going to look after them when they've got liver failure? Who do you think is going to look after them when they fall over and break their ankle from being drunk, right? That comes back into public money being spent and them accessing social care. So everything links back to us, but we are just invisible as a sector, and it's really sad.
I think you are absolutely right. People don't hear the hard yards, because what we present is we present the swan paddling on the lake, and the legs are going.
Yes.
I think everyone knows the legs are going. They just don't know maybe how far and how fast. I think it's. And you came on and you mentioned before that you'd been dealing with a safeguarding incident, which I'm not going to ask you to divulge, of course. But the fact that you were a couple of minutes late because you were talking to the police about a safeguarding incident, which was absolutely critical and it's the right thing to do. That's the day-to-day reality of social care, that we are interfacing with the primary services, and if not supporting them, then certainly taking weight off them to say, okay, you've got this problem. Social care in all of our variety and gamut and however we work, we're here to take the load off the primary sector.
100%, and that is what we do. It never ends. You know, today's actually my day off. I've been working all day. This is just what we do. We love it. You know, I didn't finish until 11 o'clock last night. I'm up 5 o'clock this morning and I'm working again. I don't get to choose my hours. So, you know, I know some directors of companies do have a different luxury, but I don't run my business like that. You know, I sit in the middle of my office. So that makes me sound like I sit in the middle, but I don't. I sit in with my team. I don't have a private office. I've got a meeting room if I've got people coming to see me, but I sit in with my workforce so that I know everything that's going on. I've got over 700 clients. I know if there's any problem that's going on, any complaint that's coming in, any safeguarding that's coming in, I'm involved. Any out of hours triage, I actually have the phone, you know, so it comes to me at the moment, and we share it out between the managers. It doesn't end. It doesn't end. You know, we're supposed to finish at 10 o'clock at night. That's our last care call. We do have some overnight stuff as well and live in, but bet your bottom dollar, after 10 o'clock, we're still going. We've still got emergencies coming in. We'll still have families that we're not due to see until 7 o'clock in the morning ring in because they've got crisis. We help with hospital discharge. We've got like a peripatetic night service as well. So we support the ambulance service. So if they've got like non-injured falls, etc., then we will go out and do the assessment and help these people off the floor. So we help the public services massively. We offer a public service, but we mustn't ever forget that social care providers are some of the most innovative people in the UK. And if you look at the tech and the innovation ideas and the creativity and the solutions that are available in the marketplace, map them all out, the majority of those people have come from the system, worked in the system, are in the system. And that's what we do. We don't just sit back and get on caring. We like to problem solve, to innovate. We like to introduce tech. You know, I seen the study that came out yesterday saying there's still 27% of providers that are not using digital systems. I thought, oh, bloody hell, how's that made a press release? I was like, 27%. Okay, that is nothing. It doesn't include all of them. And we need to break that down because those 27% are the little agencies that I've told you about, right? There's 5 of them. They've got one run. For them to literally have a software system would cost them money that would need to be taken off of their staff's wages. So why would they want a digital system? They've got 6 clients, pen and paper and an Excel, you're done. You know, why do we need to be digital? So again, the sort of messaging around that and how important it is. And I know in some of the quality and compliance now, CQC are looking poorly on providers if they're not using digital infrastructures. But again, I always say to people, kick back, because you do not need digital software when you are the only team. It's you going in. Betty calls your mobile at any time that she wants. You don't need a digital infrastructure. It's going to cost you more. And yeah, I think some of this stuff is misleading to the sector. We focus a lot on the stuff that is not important, and that is where, as a sector, we innovate and we solve those problems for the government. They go the long arse way round, and then they come back to what we said in the first place. But we'll never admit that. I'm an innovator. I develop tech. I love to problem solve. I will continue sort of advocating for the sector as well. But we are forgotten. We are lost. We are invisible.
There is a delicious irony in what you just said about CQC complaining about providers and IT infrastructure and downgrading them off them. For those listening who don't know the full story, it is too long to explain. But yeah, CQC and IT systems don't really work, and they've had to roll back on a few changes recently.
Absolutely.
First and foremost, you mentioned that we are a regulated sector. There is an element of unregulated. I'd love to pick your brains on that, but we'll come on to it. But where do you think our regulator sits in all of this? I mean, CQC have gone through turmoil the last 3-4 years. Culture has not been right. They've had the wrong CEOs in. Fair enough, and they say they're trying to change, but it is possible to run social care almost with a regulated and unregulated sector. If you look at Portugal, for example, it is pretty much the only way you can be a regulated social care provider is to be government run, because of how their laws work.
Yeah.
But they also have this huge unregulated sector of essentially hotels for mum and dad, where the kids are like, I need to put you into care, but I can't get you into the regulated sector, so you're going to go unregulated. Do you see that model happening in the UK, or do you think CQC will reform and get it right?
I think so. My opinions on CQC, I have been, touch wood, really fortunate with my inspector. I'm 40 this year, and I've known my inspector since I was 21. So she left me for a little bit, which I never forgive her for, and she knows it. But she is one of a kind. She's worked in every care home. She's done it. She has got a wealth of knowledge. She comes in and she gets it. And we have a really good working relationship where I preempt things, or I say, oh, this might land on your desk, da-da-da-da. And then if I've done something amazing, I send her loads of stuff. So I'm a feeder. I think give them all the information so there's no questions to be asked, and you own up to it. If things have gone wrong, own it, learn from it, show how you're learning. So I've had a really, really good relationship with CQC within my company, but across the country, and some of the horrors I hear, I do think, what on earth are we paying for a start? What are they doing for me? I mean, I 5 years it took for me to have an inspection, and I did actually get marked down from outstanding to good. That's when my inspector left, by the way. And I've been very honest about it. So we got inspected 2 days after I just brought in my first cohort of international workers. So in our area, we wasn't very multicultural down here. So you can imagine we just brought in 50 international workers. They'd started going out into the community. We had a lot of backlash from clients, just not accepting the change very much. So that was fed back to CQC. So they had to mark us down to good based on that, which I didn't agree with. But I appealed it and then didn't get anywhere. And then I needed to keep my mouth shut just in case it gave me any more issues, which again isn't right. But I think across the country, I don't know what they are doing to support providers. I know there's been a lot more enforcement going on. I don't think their influence for the sector is any good as well, because they would be coming down harder on councils and local authorities under their statutory duties. Because, you know, when I'm looking at tenders going out for £19.50 and we're looking at the waiting list for people to get care that are not getting care or being refused care because there's no funding. I just don't think they're doing a very good job at looking at the wider problem, and maybe honing in on providers that might be underachieving, but not looking at why and the bigger picture at why some of them are terrible. I know that, and I've seen, you know, firsthand how people can do things that they shouldn't be doing, and they do need closing down. But then there is other providers that are struggling and are having to make cuts at the moment because of this financial impact on the sector, and they've got to claw back money just to pay the wages now. The first thing people have been cutting is all the nice compliance and governance and fluffy stuff, you know. So even with us, you know, a Christmas party for me is 10 grand just to take my staff on a Christmas party, and now I'm like, I can't afford that this year. I can't give that. I would rather give it to them in wages. So I literally emailed them all and said, guys, what would you rather? Me look at the money going into your wages or have our Christmas due? But ideally, I should be doing both. I should be doing both, you know. And then I'm sending another email out to my staff saying, guys, do you know when you've been working with me for 10, 15 years, I always give you a little bonus. You know, I like to give them something, take them somewhere, get them a little weekend break. So I'm really sorry, but the government's now said anything over £50 is a benefit in kind. So you'll get taxed on it, I'll get taxed on it. They're like, I don't want it. I don't want any extra tax on it. See what I mean? So it's like, we look after your workforce, but actually we're going to tax you and penalise you for looking after your workforce as well. And if you pay over £150 on this event, do you know what I mean? It's absolutely impossible for us to reward and to continue to reward our workforce. So yeah, CQC I don't think are backing providers enough, and also I've actually just wrote a paper which I will be putting out in the public domain in a minute. 3 things that I think the government could do to support the sector without it looking like they're having to do a U-turn on the ENICs. You know, they like a U-turn. Yeah, they're quite skilled at, you know, I've got a driving school name for them and everything now. But I think back in the day, I don't know if you remember, Michael, when it used to be the Health and Social Care Authority that did all the inspections, right? We didn't pay for it. Providers didn't pay for that, because why would you pay to be inspected on because you've got publicly funded clients? We shouldn't have to pay for that because we're providing a service to the public. So that's why we never paid. And then when the new regulatory bodies come in, we had to pay a bit. They paid a bit, their government paid a bit because they're publicly funded clients, right? So you wouldn't have schools having to pay for Ofsted to come in. You wouldn't have, do you know what I mean? You wouldn't have the council having to pay for them to come in because they offer a public service. That's what we do. We offer a freaking public service. So the government should not apply. They should be funding CQC for any public funded clients that are being supported by private providers. And I think it's not going to be a massive saving, you know, but it would help. It would help people because we were already getting a lower fee. So I'm just trying to be creative without having to ask for massive policy changes. I think if we can go back to looking at that model of CQC being funded, and then there might not be so many sour grapes that CQC are not doing anything, and then maybe the government might look into it a bit more because it's their money they're spending. Because actually, we all know the value. If you're not paying anything and you're getting it for free, that's what they see CQC would like, because they're not paying for it, we are. Then, you know, it's got no meaning, has it? So I think that would be a good thing for providers. I have said about doing an employment support scheme, a bit like, which is the higher take home before the ENICs kicks in, which they've done with veterans that are trying to get back into work if they're leaving the service. You know, there's policies out there. There's multiple groups that this support scheme is applied to because it shows that it supports people into employment. So we're sat here saying we can't have overseas, we need to attract a domestic workforce. So guess what? You've already got a scheme that you wrote and said, this is how you do it. So we're sat here saying, give us that support scheme and let's see if we can get a domestic workforce. So that was my other one. And it was capping the employer's insurance. So if we cap the ITP on care insurance for the sector, then that will also allow some savings to come back in so that we can apply that to the front line. So so CQC, it needs to go. It needs to be paid by the government, and it absolutely needs a restructure. But again, there's so much they can learn from us.
Yeah. It was once put to me by someone in the NHS. We were on a call. It was a relatively large call. I think it was sort of 2021, 22, NHS and certain providers in the region. And someone relatively senior in the NHS, who shall remain nameless, they're still employed, said that social care was populated by gifted amateurs. Now, gifted amateurs. Now, this individual's head was not removed because it was via Teams, but I can assure you, had this been face-to-face, it would have been a different story. But I think, going back to your point about people listening, I think it's very easy for the NHS to be listened to by government. I think it's easy for CQC to be listened to. I think it's easy for local authorities to be listened to. But because we have this reputation, I guess, of voluntary, amateur, gifted or not, of being there no matter what, of doing what every provider in social care will recognise what you said. I finish at 11. I start at 5 or 6. That's my life right now. It's even worse for us kids who are trying to take on our parents' jobs. It's like, I do not want to end up like mum or dad. But that's my future. Yeah. I think that social care, in a way, is its own worst enemy. So we have this way of being seen and not being heard. And it goes back to the point that we made earlier about transparency and saying the good things. Yeah. That actually we can't get the nice things because we don't talk about the bad things that we deal with or the good outcomes that we deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love a spreadsheet, and I love a report, and I do that, and I evidence all the time what I do as a provider, the outcomes I've had for people. But going back to the road bit, Michael, the thing is, I understand that, because I have to say this, be careful, but I have met people that are regulated, and I do sit and think, how the hell have you got a care company? Because they might be very, very caring person, an amazing carer, but business-wise, the governance, that everything else that comes with it, and just down to call things like making decisions for people when you're not that person that should be making that decision. You should be triaging that to somebody that is allowed to do that. It's just these sort of things. I do think we have a lot of those providers in the marketplace as well that actually only need a little bit of support. They need some mentoring, they need some guidance. They can't afford it, can they? Because they haven't got enough to turn over. So there is more training that's needed for managers and business owners, not care training. They don't need that. It's more the business operations, the governance and the compliance stuff. But I do think that's a small majority of people. And then we do have people that know what they're doing, and they have given the sector a bad rep, and when we go and look at the stuff that happened with the Home Office and care providers that exploited that system as well, which I absolutely did not believe when it first happened. I was like, no way, because I like to think the best of everybody. It's definitely people setting up companies and doing it all rogue. It would never be a long-standing dom care provider, care home provider, no. And then I seen it and I was like, oh my God, that I get it. I get it why it looks bad, but it's very marginal. And it shouldn't tarnish us all with the same brush, because that is such a minute, small group of people that the Home Office, due to their lacks of policy and governance, allowed that system to be abused. So I think I've lost my trail of thought now, Michael. I was going on a rant, see. What was we talking about again? I've lost it.
I think you got sidetracked by the Home Office.
I did. The Home Office, always in my mind. See, Michael, I just go back off and then back in.
I think what's fascinating now is that we have, and just riffing on this, let's just carry this train of thought on because I think it demonstrates where providers' heads have to be. Not only do we have contracts with the local authority, we also, for those of us who provide nursing care, contracts with the NHS. We're regulated by the CQC. We have Department of Health and Social Care, he said, being very clear to stop using acronyms. So we've got the DHSC involved. We've now got the Home Office involved as well. And we've also got fire brigades. Sometimes we'll have, and we've had the police coming around looking at our medication in our care homes because of some medication we have to give out. Obviously, pharmacies will get involved, GPs will get involved.
Yeah, food
Oh, of course, yes.
standards.
And I think to understand how regulated we are is, I don't think many people actually understand. And what's it like?
No,
From the care home perspective, obviously I have a lot of property stuff to deal with. From your side, how do you see in domiciliary care and at home care? How do you see the regulation impacting your business? Has it been pretty static over the years, or has it changed?
I think, they change the key line inquiries all the freaking time. And I just try to keep up and I try to understand why they're doing it. And some of it's just hot foot. There's been an incident somewhere. It's made international media. We've got to look like we've done something. So we reworked this policy and it actually is exactly the same. But anyway, I think Dom Care, we are currently battling the funding, like you're saying, all this compliance. You look at that governance and you imagine you've got a high workforce. I have to hire somebody, one full-time member of staff, just to run the admin for my international workers, because it's daily reporting, daily comms, meetings. That is a full-time job. People can't afford to do that. This is why I don't think some of it is the ignorance. I think it is they just don't have the time to do it, and it's really, really costly. But I think we are up against the unregulated market. So we've got, in my local area, there's about 5,500 PAs. And I get it. I do get it. I'm a regulated provider. So I make sure these people come to you. They're all trained. They're safe. We're governed by CQC, which pretty much doesn't mean a lot nowadays. But we're following some sort of standards. But when I get older, would I like to pick my own PA? Would I like to just be able to go into an app like a Can on Amazon and just be like, that one looks nice, might give them a try? Is it more reactive? Do I want them every day? Do I want to have to commit to every day? Because a lot of care agencies can't do every other day because that will put a gap in their rota. Do I want more flexible model? Yes, probably. That is the modern day of care, and I do see how that will evolve. Now, with the PAs, do I think there should be some sort of regulation with the CQC? Absolutely, yes. If you're a childminder, you still have to register with Ofsted. Even if you're looking after 3, 4, whatever, you've got a cap. That should be exactly the same with CQC. They should register as an individual provider for those people. So, and I think I've been really clear about that. But I was really happy to see now with the PAs that they're able to access enhanced DBSs. That got announced recently, and absolutely should have been happening the whole freaking time. But it's this thing, we put these restrictions into place, wait for something bad to happen, and then it's like, oh, should have done that a while ago, but the damage is already done. So I think there is a place for the PAs. I do see them becoming the largest care provider in the UK. And I see them doing more of the lower end care. So that might be more of your support, shopping, going to the pharmacy, maybe food prep. And I see the regulated providers doing the more complex work and the more TDDI, so the nurse-led services, taking the burden off the district nurses, and it being more sort of if you work in a regulated provider, you are a complex skilled worker. And if you're a PA, you're a PA and you work for yourself and you earn good money. So I do see that there is places for both, and there is just small changes that can be made. Yeah, as a regulated provider, do we like it that the PA market is there? No. But is it what people want? Yes. We are caring people. We don't have to like it, but we also have to understand and empathise that people have choice, and if their choice is they like that model path better, I don't have care. So I've never been sat there and think, oh, do I want an agency? It's not something that's come to my mind, but and I can't even really think about what would I like, at that moment of time, because I don't know how easy it is to access it. But that's the other thing. It's not easy to get a regulated provider, and it is easier to get a unregulated provider at the moment, a PA at the moment, because you just go onto Facebook and be like, any PAs in the area? And then you get all these carers, from the non-available domestic workforce, message like, yeah, I'll do it, £20 an hour, £30 an hour. Well, I want to go. I'm coming for £30 an hour. It is. I do think it's the modern way of care, and I do think there's a place for both of us. I really do think regulated, unregulated. I think if you're doing PA and you haven't got enough of your own clients, you can top it up with a bit of regulated work, and vice versa. I think you can do both, and it shouldn't be about competition. It should be about meeting needs.
I think that's a really nice way of putting it. In that. To draw an analogy, I want to get some food. I've got a choice. I can either cook it myself and worry about the shop, or I can go to the restaurant, or I can call up Deliveroo. It's your choice. And,
exactly.
I think it would be disingenuous to say that social care needs to move to a gig economy. I think there is a place for the regulated pieces, as you just said. But yeah, if the rest of the world's going to accommodate the gig economy, then surely social care should be flexible enough to deliver that as well. So it sounds like then that you and I have had very similar experiences in the last sort of probably 10 years of changing levels of need. If I go back 2015, 2016, our residential homes were not women who knit. I think that's, it was a level above that. But the level of complexity that we're now seeing coming into residential care, admittedly, we do specialize in complex dementia, but even in our residential care homes, one of our residential care homes is now taking people from a mental health unit because those are the most appropriate people to be coming in. Everyone else is being dealt with through other parts of the sector. Our nursing homes are a level beyond that, with very challenging clinical behaviours and some alcohol-induced dementia and other Parkinson plus and other conditions. Is that a similar level of trajectory of need that you're seeing in your business?
100%. And I mean, when I started in care homes, so I was working in 2 care homes. And I always go on about the Bettys and Marys. Those aren't real people, by the way. They're just, otherwise I'll start name dropping and I'll break every GDPR rule in the book. So I always stick with Betty and Mary. and we've got a Frank sometimes, but it depends how far I go. If we need 3 in the mix. But, when I first started, I used to sit there in the care home with Betty. We'd be doing some knitting. I'd have her in the kitchen cooking. Then I'd go and get Fred. I'd drive Fred down to the pub. Me and him would sit in the pub for hours, go back for tea time. And they were going out. Some of their clients that lived in the care home had their own cars. Like, it was insane. And then as the years went on, so I left the care home when I don't even remember, it's about 8 years ago now. We were more complex. We had the intermediate care contract. So we had the block contract. So people would come in, we'd do the rehab, and then we'd send them home with another agency. And that's what sort of sparked me to do Bay Care down the line. Back then, because I thought, well, I can offer the full service. I can offer daycare, long-term, intermediate care, and then home care. So I can sort of offer it all. And that's how I mapped it out. And thought, right, brilliant, I'm going to do that. But with that intermediate care, we were seeing people coming for rehabilitation, and I'm like, oh, I'm good, but I ain't that good. Some of the people that were coming in, double up, hoisted, and we're getting them home in a minute. Really? Are we? Okay. But there's no care providers, or we can get them one care package a day. And I'm thinking, I just can't see how this is going to work. And they did. They got sent home, and guess what? Within a week, they were back. With broken hips, broken wrists, broken head, everything. And I could write it, and I was like, this is a system failure. So when I first started the domiciliary, it was slightly more complex because it was harder, obviously, to get a care package. But what I did find is that I'd have people that should have care packages that just didn't need them. They shouldn't have them. And then I've got people that would need care package increases because they're high risk, they're vulnerable, they're breaking down, they're not eating, and I could not get an increase. So I'd email going, got in, who's getting this and they don't need it. He lives there. Why are we helping this person when they've got a full-time carer? But I've got this person that lives on their own who is malnourished, got open pressure sores all over her body. I need to increase their care call, and nobody will sign it off. But this person over here shouts the loudest, so that's why that care has to stay in place. And this person over here has no next of kin, has no advocate. So I am now that person that is going to have to kick off, that is now going to have to ruffle feathers, that is going to have to fight. So that is a lot of what people don't see. They think, oh, I haven't. One of my staff said it to me the other day. He's like, as a director, and you're quite quiet sometimes. We don't always see you, but now I've been working with you the last couple of months because you've got a complex patient, and he sees me every day. The team see me every day, and I said, how many of these do you think I'm out dealing with? And he's like, oh, you don't sleep, and I'm like, I don't. So people don't realise there is so many complexities in it that the community services, we are dealing with more complex patients. We are upskilling staff to be able to keep people at home longer. And I do believe home first approach is always the way. And even when we had the care homes, if we felt somebody was there and didn't need to be there and was council funded, we would always say, look, we really think this person could go in package care. They're only here because they like the company. And we were always honest. It wasn't about keeping that bed and I need that money. It was about doing the right thing. So I think home first approach is always the right thing as long as we've got all the right measures in place. But there is a lot of complex patients out there that do require full-time care home support. But we have a lot of councils kicking back saying we've got too many care homes, too many people, that's their first choice, put them into a care home. And actually they should be at home. And that is a really easy thing for commissioners to say without knowing the full story and the environment and the family dynamics and the availability in the dom care market. So I think education into social work commissioning is well needed. But I do think the pressures on dom care they've changed as drastically as the care homes. And I know a lot of people that have got multiple care homes, and it's the same, more dementia. More Alzheimer's, more aggression, and more complex peg feeding, stoma, tracheostomies. There's a lot more of this coming in. So I do see that going on, and I don't think that we need a reduction in care homes. We need to enable care homes to make sure they've got the right skills. So if we've got loads of care homes that don't offer that additional TDDI nurse-led service, then actually what can we do to help them invest? Because we don't want to get rid of them and just hope someone else picks it up. Let's support them. Let's support them to get that qualification. What training do they need? Let's help you as a council, because they'll benefit from that down the line. And providers are always willing to. They've got that hot foot. You're like, we've got loads of complex patients. Brilliant. What do you want me to do? So I went and got TDDI. I'm now nurse-led. I do adults. I do children. I do all of Devon. Guess what? Can't get one client because they don't know how to commission it. Brilliant. So this is the sort of crap we face, unfortunately.
Because I'm involved in the care home business, you and I will always have a bit of a dispute as to home first, is it appropriate or not? I think
Absolutely. Yes.
I think you're right. In the majority of cases, actually trying to place someone in their own home or seeing if you can is almost definitely the right solution. There are obviously going to be cases where it's not. I was really interested in your point, though, around this person is only in the care home because they want the community, they want that socialization opportunity. Again, I don't disagree, and there is a question there in my head around if we have a limited capacity in care homes, which is 45,000 empty beds. NHS bed blocking is 13,000 on a bad Friday. So, we can support NHS if you listen, but how do we get those people who might have, I suppose they're not there anymore actually, because now people aren't coming into care homes, they're actually getting that socialization support, quote unquote, in the community. I'm not seeing it personally. I'm not seeing the community supporting those people in need. I'm seeing a lot of people being isolated and left alone. And actually, in care now, we're saying people should be in a care home or a care community much quicker because they're more lonely, more socially isolated, anxiety, stress, depression, worse outcomes. Am I wrong in this? Are you actually seeing better outcomes in the community than I am? Or am I just seeing the thin end of a wedge?
No, I think that example I used of the lady that didn't need to be in a care home, she just needed socialisation. So she did go home. She had her own property. So, and I'm thinking they're going to sell her property to pay for her care. And I'm thinking that lady can actually live at home. And then she just come every day for daycare. She come all day, 12 hours a day, still part of that community. It cost 35 quid. She had a bath, shower, fed, still seeing all her mates, and then went home, and she would stay 4 days. So, that was a beautiful example of doing the right thing for that person, because she wanted to be at home but wanted the community, and she could have both. So, but in the community, like I say, we've got a lot of complex people that do go into care homes. They do move into care homes, so we do see that a lot. It's very rare that I take people from care homes. I do a lot of like hospital discharge. They'll come to us, we assess them. Are they fit to stay in the community? Got this much care in place? That model works really, really well. And 9 times out of 10, we do end up reducing the care. But we also average probably 1 a week at least. We support to get into a care home, but they need it, because they need it financially, but actually if I was to say I could put in 24/7 care to that patient, it will cost more for me to do that than them to come into a care home, especially depending which part of the country it is. But if the client had their choice, they would stay at home with a 24/7 package of care, but they don't have the choice because money's now involved. So then we will support them to find a care home. But that person's need could have been met in the community.
I completely agree with that. So,
yeah, and we do see that a lot, Michael. We do see a lot of placements, and that takes me back. So when commissioners are saying to me, we're placing too many people in care homes, I always say, well, break that down. Why? And if they break it down, it'll go ting pound sign. That is why, because it's cheaper than having dom care coming in even for 8 hours. It's cheaper to be in a care home.
Yeah, no, it would be. And it's
yeah.
We keep coming back to this word choice, but we're also coming back to the money and how they counteract us. Actually, one interesting point I do just want to pick up on is one change that it sounds like you've encountered in the last sort of 5 years is we used to have pre-COVID an awful lot of discharge to assess beds. People would be coming in for 4 to 6 weeks from hospital. How are you doing? What do you need? And I think it gave everyone a breathing space of time. We don't seem to have that now. And I thought maybe it was a COVID thing and maybe we sort of get it back through commissioning later. But it sounds like you're not getting it either, and it's not something that's part of your process.
We do a turnaround 2 hours. And we take discharges right up till 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. So we start 6 o'clock in the morning, and we put that service in place to encourage the hospital. We did say also, not to encourage the hospital, to free up the hospital, if they want to discharge during the night, because we have the peripatetic night service, as long as the client is able, we can put them into our car and we can take them home in the middle of the night and sit with them, settle them in, make sure they've got food, electricity. We can offer that service as well, which will free up those beds. But as we know, it's not always getting people home, it's who's paying to get them home that is the issue. And it absolutely is. But no, so we do sort of a 2 hour turnaround, sometimes 30 minutes. We do get quite good information from the social workers and the hospitals, and then we get all of that onto our system, and then within 24 hours we'll go and do the rest. But that works well, and the way we have joined it up down here, so the OT, we sit on the hospital discharge meetings. So we've got the OTs there, we've got discharge coordinators, everything. So back in the day, what we were finding before we had this contract, people would be discharged, no equipment, no pressure equipment, no hospital beds, or the paramedics are taking them home and they've got 4 flights of stairs. So they've driven back to the hospital and they're now getting rebooked in. How many times that used to happen? And you just think, wow, that readmission is just 1,500 quid on its own, when you could have picked up the phone and asked somebody, is the stairs up to the property? It's all that planning stuff, isn't it? But that's another rant. But we don't see as much of that now, because it's more structured in the way that we do it. Those conversations happen before the discharge. And my team are really good. So we'll get the form over and we'll just look at it and be like, oh, grade 4 pressure sore, oh, not mobilising. And before they discharge, and we'll go, have you got X, Y, Z? Boom. and they'll say, oh, don't know. We say, don't discharge until you can get us that information, please. And we put our foot down. And they will get that information, and we will stall if we need to, or everything's in place and we're good to go. So I think that system works really well, but that isn't always the case. There is, like I said, I had the other week, I had somebody discharged from hospital, didn't tell us this person was discharged. We email in to say, here's a list of our patients, can you give us an update? And we'll get them sometimes same day, sometimes 2 days later. Nobody messaged us to say that they discharged this person, or rang us, and they were at home on their own for 2 days. And they had been putting on the tumble dryer. So they wasn't even home in the house, they were home in the shed because they didn't have the key to the front door. And this person was having to put the tumble dryer on to heat it up, open the tumble dryer, and was putting their head in the tumble dryer to warm up, and kept doing that constantly. That horror story, but that is a type of thing that does happen all the time. Like I said before, this one, I had just had an awful safeguarding incident. So these circumstances all happen all the time. It's poor communication, and it's always left for the care provider to pick up. And the first thing, I submit a safeguarding. This client's had an unsafe discharge. It's been putting their head in a tumble dryer to keep warm for the last 2 days. Why didn't you know they were discharged? Why didn't you call the hospital? Why didn't you check the hospital every day at a certain time? Are you joking? Don't push this back on me. You can see this person has a care package. I emailed in, like we do every couple of days, check our whole list, feedback, because you didn't call the care provider. Don't make this my fault. And who in their right mind would drop a client off into their shed because they can't access their own property because they don't know their own key safe? You would call the provider. You wouldn't drop them into a shed. So these are the sort of things that do happen, and the challenges that as providers that we do face and fight. And a lot of the time that I waste on having to defend the company, defend the carers when things aren't actually a problem. If I put money on that time, I think I'd be able to rise my whole workforce £1 an hour, without a doubt. And I've got a big workforce.
It's stories like that actually inspired the title of this podcast. It's not a very positive, welcome to social care. Welcome to social care. These are the stories that unfortunately are so prevalent in our sector, because I think for me individually, the sector actually works in isolation. I think the NHS is amazing, does amazing stuff. Pharmacies, GPs, police, paramedics, care home, domiciliary at-home providers, we all do great work individually. It's the joins between us. There's so many that actually it's almost impossible to make them work effectively. And I think that's where the sector falls down.
Yeah, and I think, regardless, until all this stuff that's going on, we also had all the changes to GDPR, didn't we? All the GDPR and the cyber security. It's a big thing in the sector, and it's also really costly. This is another reason why people don't want digital systems, the 27%, because then they've now got to add on cyber security to their insurance policy. It's that ripple effect, isn't it? And I think, we go on to data protection, and the amount of policies and changes we have to make as providers to implement that into our service. At the moment, it's quite, there's a lot of discussion about the travel lodges and the fact that this man was able to attain a key to get into a person's room and sexually assaulted them when they wasn't there. And now they've implemented a new policy that when they give you a room key, they won't say the room number. Brilliant. Okay. But just tell you what, I'm going to just pop to the pharmacy and pick my meds up, and in front of everybody in the pharmacy, I'm going to give you my address so you can check whether those tablets are mine.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So, but the pharmacies are allowed to do that. But if I forget to scrabble a key safe code, I've got a safeguarding. My business, my service is under severe scrutiny because that's a near miss. Hang on a minute. I've just gone and picked up my tablets, given everyone my date of birth and my home address. I'm walking home now and hoping I don't get followed. It's these sort of things that it's one rule for one for another. And it always comes back to, as social care providers, we are so governed, and there's no leeway for us. There's no leeway whatsoever. Councils get leeway with CQC, the NHS get leeway because what they're going to do, shut them down? but shut us down anytime, but we don't get that same respect, and we are sort of, I always see it as we are the ones, if there's a problem, it's the care provider's fault. It's automatic. Care provider, who's the care provider? What was they doing? Why didn't they notice it? Well, they're not a doctor, so that's probably why they didn't notice that. But, it's all this defensive stuff, and it is a waste of resource. So we definitely, we are invisible, like I keep saying, Michael, and it's really sad.
Is of course then we painted a kind of negative picture of the sector, which is unfortunate. It's great actually that we do have change coming, because we've got the Casey review going through.
Yeah.
I have a lot of time for Baroness Casey. I think she's almost got an impossible job.
Yeah.
Without leaving a witness, what do you think the Casey review is actually going to change?
It's hard because I know we've been a bit negative on this chat, but that is just the way the providers are feeling at the moment, and it is hard. I was really, really, I don't know, I was excited when I seen sort of the headlines that she come out, and she's just come out saying everything that we're saying, that we're exploited. We're exploited as a system and as a service. We're not a system because we're not functional. So that made me happy. That gave me a little bit of reassurance. But then on the back end of that, it says there's no funding. So I just can't see what she's going to be able to achieve without any funding to support it. That's my only big concern, because there is funded needed, whether it's for councils, whether it's for districts. So, social care is such a wide picture. We're not talking about funding to give directly to providers. There's other things that we need to do to make the sector whole again, and I just think locally, like you were saying about people having choice, keeping in touch with their communities, the amount of local charities and the local groups that do all this lush arts and crafts group, poem classes, they're all gone. They're all completely gone. They don't exist anymore. They're not a service to offer. You can maybe do some virtual classes, which, hello, my clients don't want to go on tech. I've tried to make them digital friendly. They don't want to go on. So they want to see people. They want to have human contact. All those beautiful little charities are gone. They're disappearing. They're going to continue to disappear. Charities are struggling. People can't volunteer as much time now, because actually to retire, it's getting later, it's getting older. People don't have that time. So that's the only thing that, the sector as a whole needs, that investment, needs that commitment to reshaping how it's delivered, and so that the sector is respected. Because we know, I get up and do, I moan about care as well, but I get up and do this every day because I care. I want good outcomes for people. I look at all my clients and think, what would I do if that was my child? What if that was my family member? I want people to have dignified lives, dignified deaths. I want families to feel supported. I know my whole workforce come to work with their whole heart, and I sit reading some of my QAS stuff yesterday. One of my clients is like, oh, the staff member, she has 10 minutes left every time. She's only a 30-minute call. She always has 10 minutes left. I'm thinking, oh God, she's going to say she's left early and she's just gone. And I'm thinking, oh no, we're going to have to get her in. And every time she sits and she gives me a hand massage, or she'll give me a little shoulder massage, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I've got another one, it's like, oh, they come their day off, and I know they're not allowed to come on their day off, but they come to help me with a bit of gardening. I was like, they did ask me, and I did sign it off, it's fine. I said the only condition was I get a picture, because I want to see the amazing work these guys are doing, because they don't shout enough about it. So, there's all these stuff that's going on. A lot of my international workforce have been having Ramadan as well. And I've had clients ringing me up saying, can they come when it breaks fast, because we're going to cook some Indian food together. We've got all this amazing, wonderful stuff going on. The staff go out and buy balloons and banners and cakes on clients' birthdays, and they have little tea parties, and they go on their days off to meet the carers that are working to do. There's so much beautiful stuff that goes on all day, every day. And if you're in the system and you're receiving that care, you see it. If you think about receiving that care, you see the horror stories and the past media crap, and it puts you off. And automatically, when your service provider's coming in, this is crap, hate them, this ain't going to work, don't like the look of that person, so automatically you've got that defense up. And we just don't need it. I know every single member of my team goes to work with their whole heart. They don't rush. They want to do what's best. They go that extra mile. They are amazing at picking up on sort of soft signs, things that are going wrong, things that we need to improve. And it is bloody hard work. But reading stuff like that, seeing pictures like that, it does keep reminding me why I do what I do. But does that get drowned out by other noise, more negative noise a lot of the time? Absolutely yes. Unfortunately, yes. And it shouldn't, but it does. And again, a lot of that is down to people being discharged out of hospital without choice. And then that just has a negative impact on the provision, the relationship from the outset, what that looks like, because choice isn't there, because it isn't available, because it's an emergency package of care. So we fight against ourselves all the time, but it's who owns up and says, because I'll say to them, well, it's not it's my contract, but it's not I didn't write it. Go back to the council and speak to them about it. But that doesn't help me with my CQC report. My CQC report will say, even if it's in the contract, you're not meeting preferences, so it's a markdown. So I can't win. But the system is beautiful. People in the system are beautiful. They need to be valued more. And we can do that with just better rights, absolutely, better hourly rates. They shouldn't have to work 6 days a week. You'd split shifts, especially with my sector. They should earn enough to not have to work any more than 4 days a week, because this is a tiring job. It's hard work mentally and physically. And we need to get an arm around these people and think, right, you can earn what you could in 5 days, in 4 days if you work in the care sector.
Yes, it's a really good way of putting it. There is a point you made there about people getting awareness of the sector, and I think what the way I'd phrase that is that historically I think we've been a minority sector. We've been accessed by a minority of the population of the country. I think in the years to come, if not already, we're actually a majority sector, where the majority of people will access social care in some guise. Children with mental health crises, care leavers, people in midlife, older life care needs, and that's all the way from, you describe PAs as providing help and support. That is still social care, all the way through the more complex stuff that you and I have both discussed. So do you see this changing in the next 20 years as we have this change in demographics, and that you and I both get ridiculously close to retirement?
Never retiring. I think, if you look at the spike of ADHD, Michael, look at that, and I am someone that has been diagnosed with ADHD, hyperactive ADHD. It's quite well known. I didn't get diagnosed until I was 38. Just got told all my life that I was, I had dyslexia, I had severe anxiety and trauma issues, but I always knew that there was something else going on, and the meds weren't working when they should and stuff. And then, I got the right diagnosis. I titrated on ADHD meds, and I haven't had anxiety since, right? So I got failed by the system in that respect as well. But we are seeing a lot of people getting diagnosed with ADHD. Some think it's a trend. And I don't agree that, anyone can say, oh, I do that. So that's autistic. I might be autistic then. And that's a lot of what's going on at the moment. And this is why, the psychiatrists and that can't keep up, because we have got a massive influx of ADHD rising. We're seeing it more in children. The studies are saying, is it linked to technology and evolution of technology? Well, that is how the brain is going to evolve. That is evolution, because we're coming into a digital world. So is it ADHD or is it the new brain? Who knows? So yes, I absolutely do think the generations are getting younger. It's harder for children to get treatment with ADHD. It's so easy for adults to fill in a form, have a 5-minute assessment and get some titration. But with the children's services I work in, when you've got the prime, honestly, the poster of a child that should be supported due to violence, aggression, therapeutic services have not worked, maybe it's time to consider medication. It is impossible because CAMS is rammed. They've just got no capacity because that is rising. The amount of children that are needing additional support. Schools are drowning. You know, it's all over the news at the moment that schools need more support because they're having more children with additional needs. Additional needs could be dyslexia, it could be ADHD, but a lot of it is ADHD and autism. And they're not equipped for it because those children need more support and time. So we are seeing more of that. A lot more teenagers having diagnosis of ADHD, autism, OCD, etc. And they all come into the social care system. Absolutely, yes. So the dynamics are changing, but we're not ready for it. We can't even look after the people that we're looking after now. We can't get a workforce to support them, and where we have and we've solved that problem, that workforce is being taken away from us. So we're absolutely not ready for that generational change. No.
One thing actually you just said that just was very bizarrely in the darkness there was a candlelight, a candle moment of hope. I think if I spoke to most of my team, we employ about 275 employees, all amazing, wide range of. The vast majority of them have some element of trauma or care that they provided. So maybe their mum or their dad required care at home, or they've been through the care system at some point. And it's like, actually, we have a workforce coming through these young kids with, don't get me wrong, terrible mental trauma, some psychological issues, learning difficulties, ADHD, all of this coming through. It's almost like they're being primed to work in this sector that's going to be calling out for them. And I know that's a really almost dark humor moment of levity and all this, but it's there is maybe hope.
100%. It's, you know, I was a trauma child, fell in love with the sector at 14. You know, I always laugh. It's not on the job description, but the staff in my office are pretty much, I've got a lot of people with ADHD in there because I levitate to ADHD, and I also can see somebody that I know can do more, but they don't allow themselves to push. So I like a bit of a project too. So I've always helped people, where other people might look and be like, absolutely not. I am like, let's do this. I can see what capabilities we can unlock with you. It's the same with children. I look after complex challenging children. I put them on childcare courses. I put them on adult social care courses because they are the most empathetic. They get dopamine from helping other people, even they've been through all that horrible trauma. They still want to give back, especially when we're looking at ADHD as well as trauma. So everybody in my whole entire workforce has some form of trauma, some form of diagnosis, or like you're saying, has cared for somebody, has had a traumatic experience with losing somebody. That is pretty much my long-term workforce. And then when I look at people that are new to care that come in, that haven't had that sort of background, that history, do they last long? No. Not because I don't support them, it's just it is too much. It is too much for them to do. When you haven't got that empathy, you cannot train empathy. But when the team come with that, they've just got it. And you need it to be in the sector.
You have to be able to care to be able to care. You have to get our group catchphrase is because we care. That's not our group.
Absolutely.
That's not our actual group catchphrase. It's actually because the one that we. I swear to God, if my father ever retired, the first thing I'm going to do go to the marketing company. We are putting this on our banner because we give a shit. Yeah, because we give a shit. That's how we're going to promote, because it speaks to much more of our family values of transparency and openness and passion. But I think you do have to give a whatever, but the bro science, the psychologist in my head is going dopamine. You get dopamine because you care, because that's and it is positive reinforcement. I've never thought, my brain had never gone, actually, yes, of course, that is going to happen.
All the time. And that's why I say, when I speak, because I've got an ADHD coach and I tell him everything. because I analyse everything, but not in a OCD way. I haven't got OCD. I am a problem solver. I love to solve problems for the right reasons. So I will look at something and think, right, I can solve that. And by solving that, that will make that person really, really safe and happy and make brilliant changes for them. And people are like, why do you all do all this for free? What are you trying to achieve? And I say, well, it is quite selfish, because once I've achieved that, I get so much dopamine. Like, you could give me £1,000, right? Or let me fix a problem. I'm taking the problem. Because I'm going to spend that £1,000 on a bit of shopping. It ain't going to last me as long as the dopamine I get from helping this person. Does that make sense? So it is selfish in that respect. So, because people that don't have ADHD or empathy in this sector will say, what is she up to? Why is she making such a fuss? Why is it so important? And she's not even getting paid. And that is the truth, because I do get paid, but I get paid in what my brain lacks, and it's dopamine. And I love it for that. And I just love solving problems with people. I love people challenging me. So if I've got a process and they'll say, Kat, think I can do it better this way? I'm like, and I'll turn around and go, I'm fuming. And they'll be like, what? And I'll be like, that's freaking brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? And that's how I work. And that's why my team stay with me, because, or if they come up, I'll go like, no, because what about this? And then they'll go, yeah. And then I go, hang on, but we could get around that, this. And they love it. And we just thrash it out. Like, nothing is a no ever from me, unless it's like £1,000 an hour pay rise. That's an absolute no. Can't even give them £1 at the moment. Thank you, government. But that's how I work, and that's what I get my dopamine from. And that, not all my workforce is ADHD, but I know they take so much from that. Even their challenging days, where they've been hit, spat at, they've had family members swear at them, they've been locked out in the rain and not got into a property for over an hour, all these awful things that happen, bless them. The cars broke down, they now can't pick their kids up from school, and they're stuck on the school run, and we're bringing taxis. Do you know what I mean? All this sort of stuff. We have a crap day sometimes, and we get up and we do it again. And we do it again, and we do it again for years and years and years. And now that is the care force. We just never, ever give up. You keep trying to bash us down. You keep trying to break us. We're not broken. We are rising now. And I think if we all stick together and use that dopamine and that empathy to form the largest weapon that we've got, and we use that to go for the government to get what we deserve, and that's for a sector that's recognised, because we ain't going anywhere. We're not a nice to have, we're a need. So what are we going to do to protect that? So, and I'm glad I've got providers like you, Michael. I've got people that are out there that are so passionate about the sector, and we do just keep pushing that ball and trying to get it closer, because if we all just give up and just sit and moan, which I do a lot of moaning, but I'm still trying to do stuff about it, then nothing will change. It's not changed in the last 20 years. And this is what I love about Providers Unite. We are a movement. So that is me trying to get the one voice across. So it is authentic. We have people that will go and feed things into the government and speak for the sector, but it's not authentic. It needs to come from the providers. It needs to come directly from the front line as well. And that's what I love about Providers Unite. I'm not held back. I'm not allowed to say X, Y, and Z because the government won't like it. And I work with the government. I don't work with the government. So I will continue advocating for the sector, with the sector. And that's the only way we're going to educate people, isn't it, Michael? There's no other way. We can't just strike like the hospitals, like the bin men. We can't do that, because you imagine the impact that would have if we just stood down for a day.
You know what? Yes, I can imagine the impact if we stood down for a day. And there is a very nefarious part of me that suggests that one of these days we should stand down for a day and see what happens. But
100%. Yeah, I've said the same, Michael. That radical, of course, that radical move goes in your head, doesn't it? Same with the overseas. I've said across the country, everyone give their international workers a day off. No international workers are allowed to work on this day at this time at all, and let's see how you all function. That's not just care, that is everything, right? Let's see how the country functions, and that's what it looks like by stopping the international route coming in when we don't have the domestic workforce. But then we will be the ones, if we stand down for a day, we're the ones that are breaching regulatory duties. We're the ones then that have put the clients at risk, and we're the ones then losing our registration. So we can't win. So how can we make an impact and make noise loud enough when we don't have the ability? We're caged. You know, I always say that we're jailed, and the government hold the key, and they let us out when they need us. They clap for us in COVID, but then we get locked back in our little jail.
We do. Kat, you mentioned Providers Unite. You do some fantastic work with the NTA as well, and I'm aware of time, so I'm gonna put a pin in that. I'm gonna pick that up in another podcast with you, if that's okay. Because the work of Providers Unite, I think, is fascinating. I think it's interesting in such a fragmented sector that we don't have that one voice in terms of representation, and so how that impacts providers is going to be fascinating. But we're going to park that. We're going to leave that for another time.
We'll do it another one. You'll have me back, Michael, so I'll come back.
Of course, we'll have you back. It'd be great to have you. Before I go, again, this is for the people entering social care, and sort of we've covered a heck of a lot of ground on sort of personal assistance, domiciliary care. Is there anywhere that you can signpost people to for more input and more advice, where they can really, if they're struggling, or if they need that further conversation, wherever they go to?
What about finding a care service?
Yeah, or just how does care work? Where can I go to learn more about this whole thing called social care, because I know nothing about it?
Well, the government would say go onto the Gov website, www.gov. That's where they're saying you find it. Or you could go to your local authorities, where they'll give you a really old, outdated list that might have some providers. But I think CQC is always somewhere I signpost people, because you get the report there, you see how they're operating, or whether they're not regulated at all. So I always signpost people there, and local care associations. You know, I'm an advocate of local care associations, the National Care Association. They have got, large membership base. They can help you do that. We've got amazing places like Age UK. They do some brilliant work. They're really good at helping signpost people in the local, and the Age UK is everywhere. And we have our community builder hubs all across the UK as well. So I always say, go to those, and social media, get your family to ask. There's so many social media platforms. We've got spotted this place, what's on here. Just go and ask. Say, I'm in this area, give me the name of a good care provider. That's what people do now. And actually, studies show that a lot of people are not Googling care providers anymore. They are AIing. Can you give me the best care provider in the area, and why? And AI is gathering all that data and giving them the best choices. So unfortunately, it might be AI that's your best bet. And I love AI, but it might be your best bet. And this is where all of the providers are like, God, how do I boost my name in AI to make sure I come to the top of the list?
Yep, we're right there. That's a huge slug of our marketing budget for this year, right there. That's big challenge.
It is. And that it's the web, but it's another impact, isn't it, Michael? Innovation. Now, as a provider, you need to pay more because someone else has innovated to make sure that your business stays relevant. You're going to have to pay for that now. It's hard, isn't it? But always investigate word of mouth. When with care homes, when I used to have the care homes, I always used to say to people, just turn up. Don't book an appointment. Just don't go in lunchtime and don't go at tea time. But just turn up, because you see the home as it is. And always avoid try and avoid the morning time if you can, because everyone knows you're getting washed and people have to dress. But just turn up. You'll see it, a live view. You'll see this. Does it smell nice? Because that's a big thing for people. That's the old, it smells like urine thing, which I can't remember the last time I walked into any care home that smelled of urine nowadays. I think that's definitely a thing of the past in the ones that I've been in anyway. And then you see the staff in real time, and just go and turn up and get the feel for it. And if you're met by an angry manager saying you should have booked an appointment, that might answer your question straight away. So I can remember it happening to me all the time. People turn up and I think, my God, why didn't they book an appointment? But then would it convert into them moving in? Yes, it would, because I made the time. They've seen everything as it is, and it's right, and that's how I would want to do it. You know, your inspector doesn't give you set times and stuff when they're coming in. They turn up because they want to see the real thing. It's the same if I'm going to choose somewhere to put my loved one. I want to see the real thing too.
Ah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah. And if people want to get in touch with you, best place to find you is on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, LinkedIn, Katrina Hall. I'm there moaning, ranting every day, picking everything to pieces. But I just say it how it is. There's no filter cat. And I love helping people. We've got the PU WhatsApp group as well. So if anyone wants to private message me, I can add you into the WhatsApp group. It's a brilliant community. You know, you don't have to watch what you're saying. You can say it how it is. Not everybody likes it, but we come together. We can support each other. And there's no restrictions. And for us as a sector, we're so restricted. We don't need to restrict each other. So we become one voice, and more than happy to engage with anybody.
Kat, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Been a pleasure, darling.